Welcome to the Love, Listen, Talk, Repeat podcast. I'm Wendy Capewell, your relationship specialist, and this podcast is all about things relating and affecting relationships. I'll be interviewing guests who are experts in their profession, learning more about what they do and how they help others. In some episodes, I'll be sharing some insights and tips of my own. So settle back and enjoy. Hi, it's Wendy again, and today I've got the pleasure of talking to Maxine Clancy. She is the founder of the Divorce Detox and Get Divorce Fit, both online coaching programs to help individuals transform and thrive during a divorce or relationship breakup. So it's such a pleasure to have you here today, Maxine. And can you tell us more about what you do and who you are?
Hi, Wendy. Hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm a relationship coach, originally trained as a transpersonal psychotherapist. Finished my training in 2000, so quite a few years ago now. And I really work with people in helping them to have a transformation in their love life. That could be through going through divorce, going through a breakup, or it could be, I'm a calling in the one coach. So a lot of people come to me and they say, I've been single forever. How can I find love? So that's what I help people to do, to find love, create love, have more love, and really step into their own expression of love in the world.
Fabulous. And bearing in mind that you are a coach and also you're trained as a psychotherapist, what do you see as the difference between the two?
So it's really interesting. When I first trained as a psychotherapist, so I started my training in 95, 96, we didn't really have coaches then. And I loved training as a psychotherapist. I think it's given me a huge background in understanding why we do what we do, our psyche, our nature, the psychology of behavior, etc. But at the end of my training, I realized that I'm probably not suited to traditional psychotherapy, in that I'm quite a dynamic and a more active person. In traditional psychotherapy, you tend to, sit back a little bit, listen, reflect. And that's not to say I don't do that. I just think the nature of my personality is more suited to coaching. And coaching's generally very like, okay, what's the problem? Where are we going to, with a very direct A to B or A to C process. And psychotherapy tends to be a little bit more, okay, we'll go where the flow with the client is. So it's a little bit different in the way, that's how I see it anyway.
Okay, yeah, and I agree with you in some respects, because I think there are some counsellors, psychotherapists who do. It's what the client brings and getting them to heal themselves. Whereas I think, although my background is psychotherapy.
Yes, I know.
Well, and I've trained as person-centered, and
yes.
It was very much, I see it like a nodding dog, like the Churchill dog in the back of a car.
Yes.
And that really freaks me out, actually. And just leaving complete silence is like, it can be very much in psychodynamic kind of therapy.
Of course, yeah.
I find that quite punishing, punitive for a client. Because they want to, as you say, they want to move forward. They want some support and help and challenged and much more. And I see myself much more that way. Let's interact. How are you going to get from A to B? Yes, okay. Let's see where you are and what caused it. But now, what can you do to actually move yourself on? And how can I help? And how can we do this? So, I get it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it makes sense. The psychodynamic approach, where you're looking at the projections and the silences, are to allow the client to have those projections come up and reveal them. The challenge is, and this is, I think, particularly what I love about coaching, particularly with a psychotherapeutic background, is that we understand all of that. We have great depth and we have great understanding of that. Yet we can explain that to the client a lot more easily, and therefore help them to move forward, and get where they need to be in less sessions than it would take in traditional psychodynamic psychotherapy. And that's not to say there isn't a place for it. I think there's definitely a place for it, but and it's certainly suited to certain types of personalities, etc. But I think, you know, really what we want is we want to help people to heal their pain and their suffering, and help them to sort of step into their own light and to shine brightly, and to really create the lives that they want. And my belief is we are way more powerful than we give ourselves credit for. And I think that some of the psychotherapeutic therapies assume that the client isn't very powerful, and I don't agree with that.
Interesting. Yeah. I think we could talk about this for a long time, and I think
sure we could.
Yeah, because there are differences, and as you say, each has its place, and it is down to the client. So I think understanding the client's needs is really important, and I think that's something you probably do too, is understanding them, understanding what they want, and then tailoring it to the client. But, yeah.
Well, do you know what's interesting? You know, that's a really interesting point, because what I teach my clients, you know, particularly when people have gone through a breakup or, you know, divorce, or, you know, even when people have been single for a really long time, one of the things they really lack is that emotional confidence and that ability to live from their own core and their center. And they don't know what they need and what they feel, because they're so disconnected from it. So it's about helping clients to get in contact with that and be present to themselves, so that then they can begin to start to ask for what they need, if they need to ask other people, or actually start to give themselves what they need. Because, you know, most people are so disconnected. I know I was a long, long time ago, very disconnected from my feelings. People would say to me, how do you feel? And I'd say, fine. And then when I was training as a psychotherapist, I remember one day I was walking up the stairs and one of my tutors said to me, how are you, Maxine? And I said, fine. And he made a comment, and I thought to myself afterwards, God, I always say fine. Like, what am I really feeling? You know? And that's not to say you have to act on every feeling. You're not supposed to act on every feeling. But it's a feedback mechanism for yourself, so that you become aware and awaken to what is really going on within you. So, yeah, that's why I think it's so important to help clients, you know, acknowledge what they need and begin to see and feel it and listen to themselves. So important.
Definitely. And I find that when I ask clients, who are you? What makes you the person you are? They really are so disconnected, they haven't got a clue. And then I say, well, if you don't know who you are, how do you know what you want from other people, from relationships, anything else? And that gets them thinking.
Yes.
And if they can't figure it out for themselves, I ask them to go and ask their friends how they perceive them. Yeah. Because that then starts it working. Because if you can't figure out what it is, what you stand for, what is about you, then sometimes a friend can open that door for you.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So what stops people from getting over a breakup or divorce? What gets in the way?
So breakups and divorces. So there's a big myth, and it actually is the same with grief to some degree as well. But the myth is that time heals. Time doesn't heal anything. Well, maybe cuts and grazes on your body. Time will help to heal that, but you notice that there's always a scab or a scar left over. It is really about making the choice to heal that allows people to heal. And I work with a lot of people that come and they've been divorced for 10, 15 years and they haven't found love again. Or if they have, they've gone through another relationship breakup, etc. So they've assumed that just by allowing time to pass that they will feel better. And we often say, oh, don't worry, time, you'll feel better with time, etc., etc. And it's really seeking to heal yourself and doing the work, because every relationship, and I'm sure you probably agree with me here, Wendy, is that every relationship is an opportunity to evolve and to heal within ourselves, the wounded child, the inner child, the bits that, unfortunately, even with the best parenting in the world, there's going to be something that has created some wound in relationship to love within us. And relationships are an opportunity to evolve that consciousness and to heal those wounded parts of us. And when we break up, if we don't do the work, if we don't look at ourselves and say, okay, what is it really calling for me to take responsibility for? What is it really calling for me to own, that bit that I'm disowning within myself? Where can I get my power back? If we don't do that, then one, we don't heal properly. And two, we just go on and repeat the pattern in another relationship. So people, second divorces, I think it's like 67% of second marriages will end in divorce. I know, I've been married twice, so, and I didn't do the full healing. I thought I'd done quite a bit, but I hadn't really fully owned what I needed to own. And so therefore you recreate the same thing. So yeah. I'm a firm believer, seek professional help. Go find that person that, whatever it is for you that resonates with you, but ask for help, because one, it will ease your suffering and your pain. You don't have to suffer for as long as people do. And that's the bit that I find, and it's the same with grief. People with grief, they can get so caught. There's a natural grieving process for grief and loss. Yeah. But people can get really stuck in that dynamic where they just think, well, time will eventually heal this. It won't. You need to do the work. Yeah. Unfortunately. Or fortunately.
Well, I say unfortunately or fortunately. But if you don't do the work, you're going to get stuck and feel miserable and unhappy, and you won't move forward, and you will possibly make the same mistakes again, attracting maybe the wrong person into your life. So isn't it better to actually, do the work, heal yourself, and then be able to have a happier life? That's my view anyway. So you're going to have the misery maybe, but at least you're learning more. I think there's learning, whereas if you stay stuck, you're stuck and you're just going around a hamster wheel.
Yeah. And I think a couple of things happen. I think, and this can upset or be confrontational for some people to hear this, but when we're suffering, or when we are going through difficult times, often we get a lot of significance from that, and we can get attention, and unconsciously, like, we're not going out, I'm going to stay in my grief, or I'm going to stay sad about my divorce so I can get attention. But one of the payoffs is that we do get attention, we get love, and we get connection with people, and we start to feel a bit significant at a time when we feel very insignificant, when we feel disconnected, when maybe we don't like being alone, and all these things. So talking about the problem over and over and over is a way of reconnecting with other people, and that reconnection in that disempowering way keeps us stuck. So, and the other thing is that sometimes we have to take responsibility for what we've created. I mean, I've said at the beginning, we're powerful creative beings. And part of, when a relationship breaks up, there's always two sides, and then there's another reality. So, we're in that mentality of we blame people, because if we blame people, then we don't have to look at ourselves. And possibly that's what we've grown up with. We learn, we live in a big society. If you watch EastEnders, that, most people feel like they're victims and they're powerless in their lives. And we don't want to claim our power. Yes, yet when we, really go on a path of, okay, let me heal this. Let me look at myself. Let me take responsibility. That's when we reclaim our power. That's when we say, oh, if I was behaving like, if I was constantly being a people pleaser in my relationship and always, doing things for other people when I, wasn't looking after myself or wasn't taking time to do things for myself, and then I get angry and resentful and then I lash out, if that's my pattern, then the hard work is actually in setting boundaries and listening to yourself and honoring yourself. And that's a change in the way you relate, and that's a new skill set. And that's sometimes more scary than actually just staying in the discomfort of what and the fact that, you've lost someone and you don't have someone in your bed at night, or you've no one to share the weekends with or something,
Yeah.
So I feel for people. It's challenging. In my second divorce, it took me, a considerable amount of time to start to really look at myself and say, okay, where was I responsible? Where was I, where was I part of the creation of of this divorce. And it takes a lot of courage to do that. So I really admire people that, you know, that do stop and say, you know what, I'm going to go and take a look at myself.
Yeah. And as you know, because I've shared with you and others, that I grew up being a people pleaser.
Yes.
And I didn't know who I was. And so then when I was in a relationship, I wasn't being the real me. I also agree with you on the other side of it, taking responsibility for our part in it. That's really a tough one, when you actually start to look at it yourself and then you challenge somebody else who's come out of an unhealthy relationship, or whatever that relationship, however it broke up, and owning that and saying, well, what part did I play in that? And that sometimes makes for uncomfortable.
It does.
Situation. Yeah.
You know, I was just talking with a client this morning, and she's going through my divorce detox program. She's on like session 6. So this is the point where I'm really expecting my client to have this major transformation. So she come back and she was like, oh my God. She said, I see what I've been doing all this time. She said, I've been attracting these men that are powerful because I don't think I've got any power, you know, and I constantly drop everything for them, and I center my whole life around them and doing what they want to do, and then I get irritated and annoyed that I feel, you know, unfulfilled. And she said, but I'm not doing anything that I want to do anymore. And it was like, you know, it was such a wake up call for her. She's like, oh my God, I've been doing this in all my relationships. And the other thing is that she said, you know, and I use this anger. She said, I get really angry with them. She said, but actually I'm so angry with myself. She said, I didn't realize I was projecting my anger outside of myself. And I'm like, yep, that's what you've been doing all along, you know? And when you wake up to that, now you can't go back. Well, you can easily fall into the trap of, you know, that behavior. But there's a bit of you that's aware, isn't there? That's a bit awoken to it, and you start to notice it even more. And I said to her, you know, you're not supposed to act upon every feeling you feel, but you need to be aware of that feeling that's coming up. So it's a feedback mechanism for you to say, okay, hold on. What is it that I need within myself? What is it that I need to do differently? What is it that I really want, you know? So I love it when that happens, when clients just go, oh my gosh, you know, I've created this and I can change it. Because if you've created it, you can change it. That's where the power is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, as you say, although there's the awakening and that awful feeling of, oh gosh, what have I been doing? It is knowing I have that power within me and I can take my power back. And that's such an amazing feeling, isn't it? To know that you can really take that back.
Can I share something from my own personal experience, my personal life? So so my second husband had a number of affairs, and I discovered his affair, or the current affair that he was having, and I was madly in love. You know, we had 2 kids, and I loved him, and blah blah blah. And I said to him, you know, we're bigger than this. We can get through this. We've got, you know, we're coaches. We can get lots of help. You know, and I sort of went into, you know, let me control everything mode type thing. Let me keep my life together. And anyway, he decided to leave. And then sort of 2 years into our divorce process, one of the women that he had the affair with came to live in the same country. So we used to live in South Africa and she came to live in England. And he went somewhere with her and she met someone that was a new friend of mine in my new circle of friends, who was a coach, who then started doing some coaching with her and introduced her into my whole circle of friends. So bearing in mind, I had been betrayed by my husband. Yeah. I was going through the divorce. This woman who was part of that whole betrayal thing was now introduced into my new friends. And I was like, you cannot imagine the language that was coming out of my mouth, right? Because I was like, how could he do this? He's introduced her to my friend. I was going mad, mental crazy. And then I woke up literally in the middle of the night with this dream and these words in my head saying, if you are experiencing betrayal, you've got that vibration within you. And I remember it was like 3-4 o'clock in the morning, and I sat down and I wrote like this whole timeline of how often I'd been betrayed, and where I had betrayed other people, and where I had betrayed myself. And it was amazing, Wendy, because suddenly I was like, yeah, that's only happening because I haven't learned that betrayal. I'm betraying myself. And I realized I kept betraying myself in the relationship by putting his needs before my own, by putting his career in front of my own. Do you know what I mean? So it was like, suddenly this woman became this gift. I mean, I really talk about transforming and seeing that, I was partly responsible for that because I kept betraying myself. I went to live in South Africa when I wanted to stay in England. Do you know what I mean? Little things like that you rationalize, and you say, yeah, I'm going to do this because we love each other. I'm going to do this because, this is what he wants, or he's more important than me. I grew up in that age where, the man was the most important person in the household. And you probably had that in your family upbringing as well. And and so I'm actually friends with that woman now. I can actually sit in the same room with her. We can sit, have a glass of wine together. I'm not saying that we're best buddies. I don't phone her up all the time, but I don't have any charge. I don't have any emotional charge around her whatsoever. And I wish her well. We've actually been on a trip, and like with lots of other people, to South Africa, because there was a group of us doing the same trip. So for me, that's transformation. That is what I want my clients to have. I get on really well with my ex-husband. We have a great laugh. We go out to dinner with our kids. We can send, texts. Sure, every now and then he might annoy me or irritate me, but it's a healthy relationship. And I think that everybody can have that, but it's a choice. You really got to choose that for yourself, and particularly if you've got children, for your children. And I think there's great power in creating that. So yeah, that's my little story.
I think it's a great story to share, and I think that's I think the first part is a very common one.
Yes.
I think the fact that you were able to transform that and change it around and take your power back and have that relationship is really testimony to not only how you have transformed yourself, but how you can share that with others. I think that's amazing. It's really amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the other thing that came up for me was about boundaries, because I think so often the problems when we want to please others is that we don't put the boundaries in for ourselves or for others, and therefore it can be that situation where people are unhappy in their relationships is because they haven't put the boundaries in for themselves. So they've allowed their partner to do something that doesn't fit for them.
Yep.
But that partner has acted like that teenager who goes, I've tried it on, I've got away with it.
Yep.
And now I'm going to try a bit more and a bit more. And that's when it erodes everything, because the partner who's got away with it all has just not taken responsibility and not being a partner. They're not being a party and a partner, an equal partner, and the other one can feel they're being controlled. And
yes.
So it's not obvious, but it's that drip of like water on a stone, because it just erodes away. And then they think, well, that's okay. Well, I got away with that. I can stay out. For example, give an example of a client at the moment. He was saying, well, I can go out with my friends. I can just stay out as long as I want. And then it was taking it further, and I can just have women friends and I can have affairs.
Oh, right.
Because not that she realised that he was having affairs, but because he'd got away with so much. Just doing his own thing and not being within the relationship. I'm not saying we can't go out with friends, we can't do those things, but it was going beyond the point of he was taking the piss, basically.
Yeah, well, I think in that situation, what you're describing there, I mean, certain alarm bells go off for me in that there's probably not a whole lot of truth going on or transparency in that relationship. And so part of what happens is we have this, so the way I look at relationships is we have to make a commitment to reveal ourselves. and to create closeness. And the minute you're feeling disconnection or you're not close to your partner, guaranteed it's because there's somewhere that you're not being completely honest about something. Whether it's about your fears about something, it could be a really simple thing like you're actually really irritated with your partner because, the way they, I don't know, the way they make love to you or something. That's quite a big thing actually, but or the way they touch you, or when they come in that they ignore you and they give the children attention and they don't come and see you and they don't give you a kiss, but you don't speak up about that and you don't acknowledge that, one, you're upset about it, and what you would really love is for your partner to come to you first when they come into the house and acknowledge you. And what happens is, in the moments that we stop sharing and start to hide our feelings because we believe we're not worthy, we don't deserve that, or we think we're being too demanding, or whatever it is that we're making up about that particular thing that we're afraid to share, you start to have these little secrets and these little lies, and you start to create more disconnection and more distance between you. And you know what it's like if you don't go to the gym for a month, you don't notice it. But if you don't go to the gym for a whole year, you notice it, don't you? And suddenly you go, why have I put on so much weight? And suddenly people look at their relationships and they go, why are we so far apart? How did we get here? How did we get here? And it's all those little bits where you've not been honest, and suddenly you've got this big, huge gap and you've got a problem. And it all starts from not being honest. And in situations like that, if you go back to boundaries, it's where you don't create that safe boundary in your relationship to say, okay, when something crops up as a problem, it's here for both of us to grow and for our relationship to flourish. Most people see a problem or a conflict as a really negative thing, and they avoid it and they run and they push it under the carpet. And they think that if there's conflict or there's something wrong, that they have to blame each other. And it goes back to, okay, I'm responsible for me, you're responsible for you. And therefore, from that place, we can look at problems and we can look at them and work through them healthily, as opposed to shoving it under the carpet. Or, in my family, when there was a problem, there was always a big fight. There was loud voices and that's scary. So you learn either don't talk about it, hide it. If you make a mistake, definitely don't own up to it. Do you know what I mean? So for me, a lot of my, training in psychotherapy was learning, it's okay. It's safe to say, I made a mistake. It's something like that. But a lot of people, they don't like,
No.
If we say something, we don't know what the response is going to be, so we don't say anything. And that's sad, isn't it? It's so sad.
It's really sad.
Yeah, some beautiful relationships start off with so much hope and possibility. And then, the distance gets created and people find it hard to recover from that.
I'd say I agree with you, and I think it's so sad, as you say, and I just feel that more and more, because we're living in a disposable society, that people then see their relationships as disposable, because they just
absolutely
there's something, that looks better than what I've got, instead of working on what they've got, and then they go from one relationship to another.
I know, and and I agree. I still stand by. Obviously, look, my ex-husband chose that he didn't want to do the work in that relationship, which I remember finding really, really difficult, to accept at the time, particularly because of the work we both sort of did do together. And I firmly believe, even now, had we have stayed together, I think we would have transformed it and our relationship would have been really amazing. But obviously, we've gone down the path we went, and the gift in that is it set me on a journey of really, well, what is this really about? Because, I believe you can have a healthy divorce. I believe that you can transform and thrive from your divorce, both of you. And so it set me on the path, and that's what I've created as a result of that. So I'm grateful for that. But it's really interesting. I think there's a lot of people, when they come to me and they're in that stage where they haven't quite left the relationship, if they start to do, to look at themselves and start to take responsibility, it can take one person to start to be different, that relationship can really turn around. So there is hope. And there, you know, if you really loved each other in the first place, and, you know, you can reconnect with that love and you can choose it, then I think there's still, you know, doesn't always mean the relationship has to end if you're both willing to do some work, you know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think so often people look at their relationship and say, what am I getting out of it? Instead of, what am I putting into it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're so ready to sit back and say, well, she isn't doing this. And therefore, well, if they're not bothering, I'm not bothering.
Yeah.
And they just sit back and I say, well, if you had an investment account, you just opened it and didn't put anything in it, would you expect to gain any interest from it? No, you wouldn't. It is something about, you've got to invest into it.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So why don't people have the love they want?
Well, for me, I think it stems from what I call the big love lie. And I think that it's because we believe love exists outside of ourselves. So, you know, we're babies, and babies are pure love consciousness. So they come into the world, and that's why everyone wants to touch them, get close to them, because they're drawn to that magnetic, loving consciousness. They don't have anything, you know, put on them yet. But the baby needs the mother, the father. It needs to be fed. It needs to be nurtured. It needs to be supported. It needs to be stroked. Because they've proven that if you don't stroke a baby, you know, in orphanages, etc., then they become listless and they can die. You know, that's proven. So we learn that love is external in the things that we do, or how the success we have, the jobs we have, or, you know, how well you do at school. And, you know, I'm not saying we shouldn't praise our children. We need to praise our children. But, you know, we get very externally orientated. And as we grow up, that external orientation becomes our way of being, instead of being internally orientated in our source of love and that connection to that divine, loving consciousness that is who we truly are. So I believe particularly that when we don't have the love we want, we think, I'll have that love when I get that partner, and then I'll be loved by them. And because they love me so much, that's going to define who I am, and that's going to make me this amazing person. And then they leave, and then we think, all that love has gone. So I think what happens is when we're so orientated externally, all our belief systems get triggered from, you know, we're unworthy of love, we're not lovable, we're not enough. I mean, everybody has that. I think everybody, would you agree with me, that thinks on some level that they're not enough to some degree? I
think, yes, I would agree. Whatever area of our lives we feel that, then I think we do feel that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think we're trying to prove that we are enough. And I think it's doing the work and saying, do you know what? I am okay. But I think even with all the other work I've done on myself, there's still those areas where it comes up and says, I just get that self-doubt. And then I have to talk myself through it and figure out why I feel like that. And often it just is history. It comes up and bites me. And I think just having that awareness and then working through it is very valuable, because we're learning constantly.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that, you know, like you say, it gets triggered because we've got all these, you know, memories and files. And in fact, because our nervous system and the way our bodies work and our nervous system, you know, we forget actually how amazing we are as human beings, don't we? We take it for granted. We wake up every morning, hopefully, you know, you get out of bed, you do your automatic thing, and most of the time we are actually automatic. Very, very rarely do we have a different thought. You know, I had a completely new thought yesterday about time, and I actually said to my boyfriend, he said, I'll text you now. So 20 minutes later, he said, I'll call you now. And I think it was about half an hour later, he called me. And during that time, I started thinking, well, what is now? Because actually, if you always say, I'll be there now, you're never late, because now is now, isn't it? Did you get that? Like, I was like, well, he's not going to be late when he calls me, because He said, I'll call you now. But now is only like right now is now with us, you know, and we use these structures of time. Time is like the whole concept of time. And this is what happens when we are in reaction to something and we get such an emotional charge. That is the point when you have to go, stop. Right now, the reality that you think is happening is based on something way back there in another moment of time. And that's when you know, when you've got big emotional charges around stuff, that's when you know that you are not dealing with something right there in that moment. You're dealing with historical stuff that needs to be cleared within you, which needs to be healed within you. And, you know, I find now I rarely react unless it's like really triggered, or if I'm like stressed, you know, if I've got some other stuff going on. But I find my ability to sort of step back and observe and sort of almost like hear that voice go, oh, that's interesting. That's that little old chestnut going on right now. Do you know what I mean? You know, so I think that's what happens. And particularly like love, even when we're in relationship, how many people do you know, Wendy, who are in relationship, they don't have the love they want, and they've been in these marriages for 20 odd years, and they stay and they work, they think they're working at it, but with all due respect, they're not really working at it. They're working at the same problem with the same strategy, and they don't have the love they want because they're so disconnected from each other and their own source of love. And I think that it goes back to you have to get back and step in and have that emotional confidence and fill yourself up from that love, you know, that's within you, before you can go out there and be loving. You can't be loving in a relationship if you are constantly resentful and fed up and annoyed and peeved with other people.
Exactly. And I think the other point that I find is so often is that people say to me, well, I need to make them happy, or I want them to make me happy. And we can't do that. We can't put that on somebody else. Happiness, our own happiness and love, they're connected. It has to come from within ourselves. Totally. We have to be content in our own skin. We have to love ourselves. We have to be happy within ourselves, because we can't connect with anybody else or have that add-on, which is what it is. It's not, he makes me complete, she makes me complete. Well, no, that has to come from within us, and it's almost like the icing on the cake, that delicious, lovely cake that you really enjoy on its own. But that is actually special, and in addition, it's the icing on the top, isn't it? But not that sickly sweet icing that you think yuck about. It's something really delightful. Yeah.
No, I agree. And I think, you know, you've used a phrase there, which for me is such an indicator of people not being responsible for their feelings and not being connected to their feelings, is when you notice clients going, they make me feel, you make me feel. No one makes you feel anything. Your feelings are your feelings. When I feel XYZ, or I might feel XYZ when your behavior is like this, or when you do this, and therefore I need you to, you know, it goes back to, you know, what you were talking earlier about, that client and the client that was, you know, pushing the boundaries, is that there are always consequences to every behavior. And in a relationship, if you're in a couple, if one of the persons is choosing to continuously stay out late night after night, okay, and then, you know, if you say, I feel upset, disappointed, angry, and the consequence of you staying out night after night is that we're going to end up, you know, never having sex together because we're all going to bed at a different time. We're going to be disconnected. We're going to argue. If you explain the consequences rather than blame them, you will start to get a different response. And the reason why people don't do that is because they're afraid of the reality of that, which generally means if someone really doesn't care about how you feel and they're not worried about the consequences, then they're not invested in the relationship. No. The point is, why should you invest any more energy in that relationship? Exactly. that, you know, you either do the work or you have to part ways. And that's unfortunate. But I think this is what happens. So often we're afraid of what it really means. Even though deep inside we might know, we're afraid of that. And that's why we don't take action. That's why we don't say things that we know we need to say.
Yeah. And I think that's so often why people won't do anything about their relationship.
Yeah.
I'm scared to try something different. I'm scared to rock the boat because I'm worried it could make it worse. Well, what if it made it better?
Yeah, it could make it better, definitely.
But that's where I find they just, oh no, I don't want to do this. I'm okay as it is. I'm not happy, but it's better than nothing, or that's all it's worth, or whatever. And why settle for second best? You know, when you could have really a great relationship if you just tweaked it, if you just started being honest with each other, if you started taking responsibility for your part in it, as you so rightly said. It's so sad. And that's where you end up, and I sometimes do as well, end up with trying to figure out for people how to move on from that breakup.
Yeah.
Happy relationship. It's really, really sad, isn't it?
It is. It is. And you know, if people are listening and they're in that place, I think it's really important to acknowledge that it takes courage to look at ourselves, and takes courage to look at our relationships. But actually, there is always a silver lining. You know, if you really embark on that, if you listen to yourself and you know, like deep in your heart, that this relationship isn't serving you, that you know that you can create, or maybe maybe you don't have the confidence to know that it's definitely or the trust or the faith to know that it's definitely going to come. But if you are so uncomfortable in your relationship and so unhappy, then it's up to you to make that choice to find and seek your own happiness, because you can definitely create your own happiness. It doesn't matter what anyone else is doing around you, you can be happy, but that's a choice you have to make. And I really, you know, for your listeners, to really say that, you know, you're never alone. There is always someone at hand that can help you. You know, you've got you, Wendy, you know, there's a book out there. There's so much stuff on YouTube. You know, even in your darkest moment, we've had so much things, you know, in the press at the moment with suicides and things. And I've had personal experience. My best friend, you know, committed suicide. And I really, you know, we are never alone. Someone, you know, just needs to reach out and share what is going on for them, because often we think we are the only person that feels that way, particularly if you're really stuck in that sense of, you know, where you feel unloved and where you feel alone, you feel that no one gets you, no one understands you, and you think you're the only person on the planet with this problem. Guaranteed you're not. So reach out, ask for help, don't suffer in silence. You know, and it does take a little bit of courage, but you will begin to feel better by taking that first baby step. And all of it is baby steps, you know. So that's really what I say as well. I think it's really important to just acknowledge that for people.
Yeah. I think there is that fear and shame of feeling that you're the only one, and social media doesn't help, because everybody's parading on social media about how wonderful their life is and how amazing their partner is and all those other things. And actually, just it isn't. That's not real. That's another lie as well. But then we measure that up, and then you feel, well, I can't possibly share with anybody that my life isn't perfect, that I'm not the happiest person in the world, that my relationship isn't as good as it could be. There's all that shame that's attached to it. But actually, so many more people are in that situation and they would care to admit. They just why do they need to put it on social media? If they're that happy, then they don't need to parade it.
Well, yeah, I think that's so. You maybe pause there, because I was actually thinking about what you're saying. I think there's a really interesting thing around social media and trust, and I think that, you know, it's quite interesting because I for a long time hadn't been in a relationship. I've dated. I've been like the dating queen for the last 5 years. I date guys for about 3 or 4 dates, and I think the longest was 3 months or something like that. And because of the work I do, and I'm involved in relationships, etc. When I trained as a Calling in the One coach, which was about 2 years ago now, I was almost like, well, where's my man? Where's my relationship sort of thing? I should, and I can't coach people if I haven't got this relationship, and blah, 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 blah. And it's quite fascinating because I think what happens with social media is we end up comparing ourselves constantly. And I know myself, like, I'd sort of think to myself, oh, well, how am I going to be this great coach? Even though I'm an amazing coach and I've been coaching for a long time, how can I help people find love if I haven't found it yet? So right now I do post about my lovely, amazing boyfriend who I manifested on New Year's Eve this year, because it's part of what I do. And also because I think it's really important to give hope. But I've also been there and said like the crap about being on your own and what it's like when you're lonely and you're single. And so I think that, we must not compare ourselves to other people because everybody is where they are. Okay. Yeah. And we have to accept we are where we are. We're in, the perfect place right now. As my ex-husband says, everything is on the way, not in the way. And it's really, really important that we just recognize that, what we see, nothing is ever, is never really what we see isn't what we see, is it? It's like nothing is really as it seems. No. Even people, you look at someone like Kate Spade, who's clearly had a lot of money. You don't know how much money she actually, she's been very successful. Even like the Beckhams, I think, is a really good example, of what is, they have a lot. There's loads of rumors at the moment about, are they going through divorce? What is the nature of their relationship, et cetera, et cetera. And you could look at their lives and think, well, they've got so much money that they'll be happy anyway. Or you could look at their lives and say, well, what does it matter if they're getting divorced because of the fact that, they've got so much money? And that's just our projection that makes us feel better to rationalize our own selves. So I think it's really, it's so important, as you say, to just get back in your own center, live from yourself as opposed to comparing yourself, live from your own value, your own worth, and stop comparing yourself and everybody else and what they're doing on social media. In fact, spend less time on social media is my advice, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Live it instead of just watching it, observing it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you briefly mentioned the Calling in the One coaching program. Yes. And can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so I don't know if you've heard of Katherine Woodward Thomas. She is better known for Conscious Uncoupling, where she helped Gwyneth Paltrow and Chris Martin consciously uncouple, which basically means to have a very conscious and healthy divorce. And she was number one bestselling author, Calling in the One, and she's a family therapist. So I trained with her, and I'm being mentored by her in my work that I do as a coach. And really the process is around uncovering the inner blocks to love. So, when we say, oh, there's no good men out there, they're all taken, that is really about our own fears or our own inner beliefs that, there's not enough or we're not enough. Or the fact that we've been so wounded in our relationship with love that we're so afraid that we're going to get hurt again, that we then sort of say, oh, there's no men out there. Or, I'm looking for this certain type. I think it's fascinating when we look for that particular type out of all the different, types of people there are in the world, men and women. We're looking for this one type of person and we can't find them. So it's about looking at the inner blocks and saying, what is it we need to overcome within ourselves in order to create love? And most people find, and this is certainly what I found when they do Calling in the One, is they fall in love. That transformation of love comes within yourself. And so you're more magnetic to creating love because you more expressive in love in all different areas of your life, whether it's the work you do, whether it's, you know, with your children, with your family, your friends, whether it's, you know, for me, you know, I was at the time when I did my training, I was too afraid to sort of really go out there and just coach. So I was still working in the corporate world, and I just wanted to coach and do my own business. And because I had my 2 children that, you know, fundamentally I feel responsible for, and, you know, their father obviously contributes, but, you know, I have to look after the home. And I was just kept saying, no, I can't, you know, leave my job. I need that security. And after doing the training, I was like, yeah, I'm leaving my job. I was like, and the best thing I ever did, you know, and I gave myself that. And that's because I really, you know, reclaimed the love I have for myself. And that's really what happens in Calling in the One. But it is a 7-step process, and you have 8 coaching sessions, but you work through the book. And it's a really powerful course in transforming the love in yourself, and therefore the impact of that around you. So I love it. It's brilliant, really brilliant.
Great. So is it a book that you've written that goes with this?
No. So Katherine Woodward Thomas wrote the book Calling in the One. I think I don't know how many millions of copies have been sold, or it's like it's a process. Over 200,000 people have gone through training and coaching. You know, done the process. It really does work. And she's an amazing woman. She's done some great, you know, I love the work that she does. And it's a step-by-step process that takes you from, you know, starting to heal the resentments, look at yourself, to, you know, saying, well, she uses the phrase, what is love fulfilled? But I prefer, what is love reimagined? Because I think we have to reimagine love. You know, when we've been heartbroken, that the way we saw love changes and it shifts, and we have to reimagine and revision that. So for me, it's about, you know, what is happy, healthy love look like now, you know? So that's the process you go through, and it's powerful, really powerful. Yeah.
Great. It sounds really, really, really good. So how do people get in touch with you to find more about that?
So, well, my website's MaxineClancy.com, and Instagram, I'm a big Instagram person. I love Instagram. So I'm on there, Maxine Clancy. And Divorce Detox. If you Google the Divorce Detox, I'm finishing my book at the moment. So I'm hoping that it's going to be out by the end of the year. So that's my plan. That's my big thing for 2018, to get that book out there. But yeah, they can contact me, Facebook, Maxine Clancy Coaching on Facebook as well.
Great. And I will put all the details in the show notes.
Lovely,
but
thank
some
you.
people, they may be listening to it and you know, they haven't got those details, so it's useful for people to be able to hear. Yeah. Anything else you want to add to this? Because I think it's been a fascinating conversation. I've loved it. And I just wonder if there's anything that you really want, you know, one thing that you want to really say, or that I missed asking you, or you've got a burning kind of tip or something.
You know what? I think this is the, you know, like people say, well, what do you do and how do you do it? And blah. And really, what I believe is that we are, you know, divine beings having this, you know, we're spiritual, and everything that shows up is an opportunity for us to get closer to love. So whether that, you know, and that's through opening ourselves up to the love that's within us, and then, you know, that magnifies around you. So, you know, we are powerful. You are powerful. Listeners, you are powerful, and you can have the love you want. And even if you think right now, what's this crazy woman talking about? Opening my heart up. And, you know, it's all within you. It's your birthright. That's who you are. So just, you know, just choose it. Like, choose it. Choose love every day. And if you're feeling depressed, it can seem like such a difficult thing to do. So just choose to feel a little bit better. You know, just take the small baby steps to feeling a little bit better. And then, you know, you can start to really just open yourselves up, and it's possible for everybody. So ask for help. I could talk for ages, Wendy. So, you know, you've got to have
I think we both could. And I think there's a lot that we both feel very passionate about.
Yes.
I think we could talk forever. Maybe we should do another one another time.
Yes, another time, definitely.
But yeah, I've really enjoyed talking to you today. I think it's been really interesting. I think there are things that I've learned from you, as well as just sharing things that we both have in common and the way we work together. But I hope the listeners have really enjoyed it as much as I have. So
I hope so too.
So
it's been lovely. Thank you so much for inviting me. And
you're very
it's been
welcome.
a lovely conversation. I'm always inspired by these conversations. So thank you.
You're welcome. Take care. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
I really hope you enjoyed the podcast today, and you can always listen to others by clicking on my website, www.yourrelationshipspecialist.co.uk, and finding the podcasts on there. You can also learn much more about me and get in touch or sign up for my newsletter. So until next time, bye for now.